Welcome to Rise. This is a 4-part Black History Month educational series presented by Simmons College of Kentucky and the Kentucky Lottery. We are so glad that you've decided to take part in this history lesson. Let's head to class. Every year, February lends to us its days, allowing one to rediscover the giants of our past. The usual histories of King, Parks, and Tubman are elevated to view. But if you go a bit deeper, you will see that our history stretches wide as the River Nile. Louisville was the home and stage to several Black history makers, all tied to our city's only HBCU, Simmons College of Kentucky. In this series, you will hear all about these world changers. 1. A minister, educator, and activist. Another, an American baritone opera singer, and one of the first Blacks to sing with a major opera company. Another, a journalist, writer, and educator that built up this institution so tough, it would go on to be dubbed as the Black Harvard of the South. Trailblazing women that took up the cause of education, raising money to erect a building that still stands today. Women in journalism, education, and activism. True women of wonder, and the artistry, necessity, and distinction of America's historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs for short. Our new vice president is a product of one. We'll delve into our sacred past, talk about our relevant present, and hopes for a vivid future. This is our story. Hold your nose. We're going into the deep. Welcome to Rise.
Could take the spiritual liberty and step into the imagination of a slave anticipating freedom. I could not wait until I got my hands on the book.
Realizing that being Black, he was always in the rear, in behind.
They treasured getting an education even if they only had the Bible.
Just the whole notion of how do we start anew, and they realized there were things that they had not been exposed to.
The church was so instrumental in helping these freed slaves realize the absolute critical need for education.
It was their means of elevation to help get them from where they were to where they wanted to be.
If I were to go back down the roads of history, and I would think about what we had to go through, some of the barriers, I would think of Plessy versus Ferguson, who created the separate but equal doctrine.
That was the wording, but the practicality of separate but equal did not take place. We got second-handed school books, we got second-handed musical instruments.
Sometimes the desks had derogatory terms about Black people engraved in them.
If they caught you reading one of the books that dealt with economics, they'd ask you where you got the book from. I ain't talking about what I heard, I'm talking about what I had to live with.
It gave them a sense of determination that regardless of what they were told or made to feel about themselves, they were just that more determined.
We had educators that no matter what the resources were or were not, we got a quality education.
Simmons College comes from that tradition that, you know, a learned people cannot be deceived.
So the barriers wasn't so much a barrier as it was incentive.
To break those barriers and to become the leaders of our nation and leaders in their community, the need for a historically Black college is so critical.
I am so happy that this college is located in the black community. It really ends up being a beacon of hope.
Around the country where HBCUs exist, they become the mecca for employment opportunities, for economic development.
And I can see how Simmons plays such a critical role in exposing to people to so many things that you just obviously think they've been exposed to. They have not.
But see, here's the deal. Education is the new currency, you know, in the world, not just in the United States or Louisville.
Students who come to a black institution leave with a better sense of self-expression because they are learning more about who they are.
They say, wow, this is a great repository of me.
Simmons is not just a school.
And wherever education has been in the hearts and in the lives of blacks, the royalty and the kingship of who we really are comes forth in leadership, in stamina, in growth, determination, influence, and it uplifts the black community. So education in our history was king, and education is king.
We develop leaders.
You represent who I am, who I have been, and who I can be.
Change agents.
Keeping the spirit of activism and engagement alive and well.
That ignite their communities.
The community of achievement, one that will demand much of you.
And change the world.
He set out to do it, and to do it well.
We produce 80% of all black doctors and dentists. We generate the black middle class.
Strong enough to support the weight of whatever you could dream.
We provide a sense of belonging, a celebration of our unique culture.
That is the magic of this place. Almost anything can happen here.
We are the pipeline that produced many of America's black first.
But its mission has been to ensure those firsts were not the last.
The nation's VP-elect is a product of this distinct heritage.
When you attend an HBCU, there is nothing you can't do.
We are America's historically black colleges and universities. And we're proud to be Louisville's only HBCU, Simmons College of Kentucky.
Maybe you have been chosen for such a time as this.
Visit simmonscollegeky.edu or text ADMIT to 55444. We are Louisville's HBCU.
Simmons has uncovered a history that connects the school to some of America's greatest thinkers.
A press conference was held today.
History-making partnership.
Announcing a partnership between Simmons College and Jefferson County Public Schools.
Teacher shortage. There is teacher shortage across America. The research is really clear.
And I can see how Simmons plays such a critical role.
Partnership intentionally designed to build more minority teachers.
Simmons is not just a school. We have a rich history.
How important this partnership is going to be in helping to correct a historic wrong and towards
underrepresented minorities.
We have to do better. I believe this program is the beginning of something that could be really special.
To have Simmons as a partner in recruiting minority teachers says two things. One, there is nothing that happens in any community that's any more important to the future of that community than the productivity of its school system. Two, there's addressing an enduring issue in the education workforce.
The reason why this partnership is so significant is, first of all, HBCUs specialize in preparing black teachers to teach in the classroom.
HBCUs have always been committed to that. And so when you see the disproportionate statistics, when you really think about the culture of HBCUs, you know, from Cheney to Morehouse to Spelman to Simmons. It's really no surprise that you see so many terminal degrees, PhDs, MDs, JDs, awarded to people who started out at HBCUs.
This is really a return to what we were doing in the first place.
Dramatic impact. So we ought to just kind of take a minute and reflect on the reality of Simmons and the position it occupies in addressing something that we haven't been able to solve yet.
Place everything in the context on what was going on with black people in the late 1800s. You see the end of the Civil War in 1865, the Reconstruction Amendment, 13th Amendment freeing the slaves, 14th Amendment granting citizenship and due process under the law, and finally in 1870 the 15th Amendment, which gave black men the right to vote.
4 months after Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, the former slaves in this state came together and formed the General Association.
They're tasked with creating a new black intelligentsia that are going to become the socio-political leaders of black America. That's really the context that Simmons fit into as we were going into the 20th century.
And then in 1879, Simmons College of Kentucky opened its doors.
Reconstruction ends in 1876-1877 with the Hayes-Tilden Compromise. You see incredible retrenchment in white America.
The pressure was on all black colleges to pattern themselves after Hampton Institute, which was designed to prepare black people for the low-tier jobs and not for the professional jobs. William J. Simmons militated against that and said, Howard is our model. So he set the trajectory for Simmons, and there were two primary goals that he had. Goal number one was to create a black professional class, which they did. His second goal was to create an institution that was black governed.
When you talk about excellence, black people have always understood they had to be better. HBCUs understood and understand that they have to be better. And so they're not just teaching reading, writing, arithmetic. They're teaching a commitment to something greater than the individual.
In fact, it was the only institution in America that had a law school, medical school, liberal arts college. The entire faculty was black. The entire governance was black. So it was the personification of black empowerment.
That excellence is always there. As the Greeks talked about, that arete, always reaching for something higher, not just for themselves, but those around them.
So it started for the purpose of training the black professional class and especially teachers.
Some of the most prestigious names in every facet of education were involved with Simmons College.
Education was important to African Americans at that time for the same reason that education is important to African Americans now. It is absolutely essential that black people understood the system in which they were functioning, no matter how unfair that system was or is.
And then a huge catastrophic economic development takes it down, and we don't know how to hold on to the institution itself.
What happened to Simmons is what happened to many institutions, especially black institutions in America. I mean, this was a time of extreme racism and the access to opportunity. It was bad. The stock market crashed in 1929. The banks foreclosed on them. They lost their property, and the University of Louisville purchased the property to establish a segregated division. And not only did they use their superior financial resources to purchase the campus that slaves had built, but spoke very disparagingly of Simmons University. Kent said that Simmons was a poor excuse for a university. But what Raymond Kent should have said was not that Simmons was a poor excuse for a university, but that the United States was a poor excuse for a democracy.
White arrogance in America is a heck of a thing. The lack of awareness of what's gone on with black people in this country. How HBCUs couldn't just be colleges, they had to serve as primary schools as well. But the products coming out of those schools were incredibly stellar. But black people are always a stellar people. All they needed was an equal opportunity.
What is tragic is everything that Simmons once did and everything that Simmons once had, from our curriculum, to our degrees, to our clubs, and even our sororities. That story got dropped off the consciousness of the city. No historical black college or university has ever made the comeback that we made. And no college in American history has ever lost its campus and returned back to the campus that it lost.
Perhaps through this engagement, we will talk about each of us challenging each of us to bring forward 20 young people, 30 young people, whatever you can take on to help illuminate a path to a future that they may have difficulty seeing.
You really touched on what I think is probably one of, if not the most important function of HBCUs. They set up a situation where students understand that black people have a history worth studying, lives worth living, and a future worth constructing.
We have to see every child in every classroom in our community as the potential leader of something great.
When you take institutions like that, people buy those types of professors who love those kids and teach them to function without fear, there is no substitute for that.
These children are developing an orientation to the world that certainly includes their immediate survival, but also must include a sense of what their future holds.
HBCUs, they've been able to take those lost souls and produce something at the end that sometimes their parents don't even recognize. Then the children can go back and rescue their elders. And that's as it should be. Many say, and a child shall lead, right?
Going to Simmons is definitely an experience because of the history that we have here. I've learned so much, and I love my teachers. I guess the best part.
He pushed me enough and cared for me enough to let me know that I'm more than the choices and decisions that I'm making.
I love my HBCU, Simmons College of Kentucky.
It's literally changing my life.
HBCUs. Some say they went for the culture. Some say the experience. Some decided to attend as a commitment to carrying on that family tradition. But for whatever reason, all will agree that their life would never be the same. It's an experience like no other, an opportunity to indulge and celebrate our culture, our distinct heritage, and the permission to be unapologetically Black. Hear from these leaders about the power of their HBCU experience.
Did you know that the word alma mater comes from the Latin meaning nurturing mother? One of our primary objectives at Simmons College of Kentucky is to nurture late bloomers. So it doesn't matter if you struggle through high school just to graduate, or even if you earn your GED. We don't look at a student's past, we look at their potential.
You really touched on what I think is probably one of, if not the most important function of HBCUs. There are certain kids that are coming up in familial cultures, right? As you said, they get it. They're going to be successful no matter what. The important thing about HBCUs, though, is teachers leave their fingerprints on children more than anybody in the world.
The nurturing environment, I think that is absolutely crucial for some people. For most folks coming out of high school, just to have that environment where you could relate to somebody and not have to feel like you're a number amongst many, where a professor can call on you by name, and know who you are, know what your goals are.
It doesn't matter if you're poised for a certain amount of excellence because your background has already kind of set you in that place, or if you're coming from a background where there's a bit more of some obstacles and challenges. I think HBCUs, because of the time that professors take to make sure that you get it right, to make sure that you understand it, to make sure that you're prepared beyond your experience on that campus.
There are folks who in their life have probably not been taken seriously, sometimes seriously put down in dealing in a world that's not fully theirs. And black universities give you a chance to be yourself in your culture, to find support, to find acceptance, to find understanding.
You know what? You are only as strong as your weakest link, and if you lift up your weakest link, then that makes the entire community strong. So when you're looking at West and South Louisville and you're wondering why aren't these kids doing fill in the blank? If you donate your funds, they will be able to fill in the blank with your help. So I think that HBCUs are a great gateway to the rest of your life.
You're sharpened in a way that brings such potency to the way that you can live your life. So the academic rigor is not at all compromised. The socialization is amplified. The acceptance and understanding understanding of you at your core and your struggles and your culture is just a foregone conclusion. So you don't have to prove any of that. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to wonder what's happening to you as it relates to your skin color and your culture.
They're teaching a commitment to something greater than the individual. That's really the legacy of HBCUs, and I think that's why HBCU graduates are different. One, they go into an environment where they don't have to worry about race. You know it's all about your talent. You know you're going into that classroom, you're going onto that court, you're going onto that field, and if you can play, then you're gonna be all right. But there's also instilling this great sense of self that you find in HBCU graduates. There is no replication of that culture, right? And so when they come out of those schools, that's why they're able to go on to the predominantly white institutions and to graduate school, to law school, to medical school, and never get lost in that grind.
HBCUs do exactly what other institutions do, but with less resources, and probably better. I would argue better. If you think about how HBCUs actually, for those students who may not have the qualifications to immediately be ready for school and need extra help, HBCUs take that time to actually help you get on track where you need to be, and in most cases exceed the expectations you may have had coming into it.
There were definitely times where I doubted myself. There were times where I felt that, there's so many people out there who are just as good as me. But again, coming back to that nurturing environment, our professors, the professors I had, were not only nurturing, but they were very helpful in establishing networks for me to utilize.
The experience that I had at Spelman was such a nurturing, positive, loving experience. Having a close relationship with my professors, being invited over to the president's house on a frequent basis. And I'm telling you what, there is nothing like it.
Especially for the young black males. I always niche it. I said, everybody don't have to go to HBCU, but buddy, for what it done for me, coming from my educational background, hey, it changed my life. It changed the way I think.
Hands down, the best experience of my life. And what I would tell kids, and what I tell my own children, is that it's a place where you can go where everywhere you look, you can see yourself. and be validated and be accepted and have your authenticity affirmed. So it's just beautiful from the folks that are doing the landscaping to the president of the college and everybody in between. Looks like you, rooting for you, encouraging you. It's like an environment like no other.
Dr. William J. Simmons was celebrated as the most recognized educator of the late 19th century. He was the first black man as a clergyman in the state of Kentucky with an earned degree from Howard University. Howard University would later bestow upon him an honorary doctorate degree, but he was a brilliant man. His greatest contribution, besides founding and starting Simmons College and the National Baptist Convention of America, which is the largest black organization in the world, was that he wrote a book that is part of the public domain called Men of Mark. And in the preface to the book, he says these lines, these words, which are just sketched into my mind, and these are verbatim from his book. He says, "I write so that men may know the means and manner of a person's elevation," which is for him was education. That's what Men of Mark is about. My only hope is that we will continue to develop not only men of mark, but women of mark and people of mark who make their mark in our community and in our society by doing the things that makes us all better.